concern about removing the parking. The question before taking off the parking is where will people park when the existing parking spaces are removed? And we're talking about local residents who do use those parking spaces. There was a discussion whether the actual distance of the parking spaces near the road is reducing the speed of the cars and therefore making it easier, safer to use the road for cyclists, please. Then came the concern about road safety due to traffic speed, where we came up with a couple of ideas which we'll see in design ideas. And the last concern that we wrote down at least was that when the cycleway is too narrow for raised, the cycleway as it is in some of the sections is too narrow for a raised curb, so we propose either to drop the cycleway to the road level or combine with the pavement to create a shared pathway, so you allow for the cyclist to take over and not drop down the curb into the road. Now about the design aids, we had plenty, some quite ingenious. First, in order to calm the speed and allow better connectivity between the two sides of the road, which today, both in Victoria Road and in Histon, is quite difficult to get across, so we introduced a couple of raised crossings in strategic points. I'm not sure I can show it to you, but I'll get to it in a minute. But one of them has identified, that's related to the next point, that from the recreation ground, people are cycling down into the cemetery, and we've suggested that, well, while there is an existing crossing further up north, maybe it's worth getting another crossing, and therefore these will also create speed calming measures. Histon to Victoria Road, the junction itself, I don't have it here, but the idea is that, well, okay, you may accept the fact that you don't allow people to cross into Victoria Road while in peak time, so that improves the flow on the road, but there's no reason to keep it like that off-peak. There is, as Judith said before, there is a reason to believe that there is a difference during the daytime. So cars are allowed to come down. Whether to restrict the size of those cars or not, it's another question. The big 20 here, I think, says it all. Down from Aldi towards the south, reduce speed to 20 miles per hour. Going southwards as coming into the city, there's no reason to whiz by. Not that there is much of it. The discussion was that it's 20 miles per hour anyway, but let's make it embedded into the road. Another, it's not probably to the order, but yeah, the big revelation is that locals don't cycle on Histon Road, or mostly don't cycle on Histon Road, and what we think should be done as part of the city deal, at least, is a broader thinking about cycling not only within the narrow boundary of curbstone to curbstone, but looking at a wider network of cycling routes outside the main roads, and therefore taking cyclists off the risk of getting hit by a car on main roads. As I mentioned before, already some of those networks have been identified, but I think a separate work for that needs to be done separately, as a separate exercise relevant to what we're looking at today. And the last one, which is cheeky, but we thought it's worth highlighting, is that there are several opportunities along the road, like the ATS, where it's been identified by the local plan as a place to be further developed. We thought that both County Council and City Council, Glenn's not here now, soon to be gone, but they can actually encourage the developers to develop the area outside, next to the street, as some sort of a public realm for the benefit of the residents. Another point like that was next to the co-op, where several scribbles about arranging the parking there was raised, but the idea was that this is not a corridor, this is not only a road, it's a street, it has people on it. You might want, I don't know how much of the kids actually enjoy the area next to the road, but once you develop those places, they'll become part of the wider, again, widening the view of the city deal rather than from curbstone to curbstone into how the community is using this space. Although it's outside the boundary line, maybe looking at ways to, models to develop this. Okay? Thank you.
The Gilbert Road junction, we talked about taking cycle routes around the corner, basically designing cycle routes that could turn on the, basically left turn on right, possibly. Left turn on red. Yeah. Left turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. The lay-by on Histon Road, it's number 130, is used by St. Luke's Primary School for coaches and school trips, and it's shown as green space, and they're saying that that lay-by is actually very important because they don't know where to go otherwise. But in general about lay-bys, we felt that where it was physically possible at all, the bus stops should actually be lay-bys. The bus should pull in away from the street. And if you're going to take any land and widen it, you should widen it simply to have the bus stop pull in out of the traffic. And we were also concerned about the lack of pedestrian crossings at Histon Road and Victoria Road. And, well, in not changing the Victoria Road junction, we didn't like that swath of green coming out and obstructing it, because if you actually observe that turning, the cars back up. I mean, you need that road space to be able to carry the traffic into the junction. So I think we spent a lot of time on the cycles and trying to find other routes for the cycles and opposing
restrictions at certain times to allow for deliveries to shops and houses is very important on the east side of Histon Road. Reduce traffic lanes perhaps to 5.4 metres if it is allowed. We're not quite sure from the diagrams of minimum widths whether it is, but apparently it is being reduced to 5.4 in other roads in Cambridge currently, because this can force drivers to be slow and careful and stop the shooting down the road and allows more space on either side for footways, cycleways and so on. And also this will help buffer the sound. I know residents on Histon Road are very concerned about the removal of parking and bringing the traffic nearer to their houses, which will cause them a lot of upset and worry about vibration and noise. So if the parking is lost. So again, loss of parking is problematic for those people, and there is an increase in the number of cars and a worry that our area might have the same problem as the Castle Hill area, where there are more parking permits given out than there are spaces, which could be a possibility. Design concerns are what are the options for alternative parking for residents on Histon Road. Deliveries to shops, maintaining existing hedges so that they do not overlap onto the street. And this is a neighbourhood, not a corridor. If somebody would like to do the second bit.
So this was looking at Victoria Road junction. Common consensus was to keep it as it is, that the detour that it requires residents to make is too far out of the way, and it will just push problems out to Mitcham's Corner and other junctions. So we're looking at if that's not possible or if that's not desirable, then what the compromise might be. And one compromise would be, or one idea which may work with this anyway, is route the buses down Castle Hill rather than through Victoria Road, so that they continue on to the Hunton Road junction and then left. So they're not turning left, they don't need to turn left into Victoria Road, and nor will they be turning right out of Victoria Road. Then also a question about whether HGVs perhaps also should not be turning left into Victoria Road, and that would actually mean you could tighten that corner a bit and create space for a cycle lane to continue round into Victoria Road. You can see that. But actually the cycle lane continue round, and it wouldn't need to be light controlled. So in other words, the cyclists could just continue round into Victoria Road without being held up. If necessary, a right-hand turn, a right turn ban into Victoria Road could be considered. If that's obviously that holds up traffic going through, so that may be necessary to compromise. And the other junction. So on here, the main concern was about not having a right filter lane into Gilbert Road. That if the buses are going to get held up by traffic that's stopped, unable to turn into Gilbert Road, or you'll have a very long, they don't know it's inevitable that they'll get stopped there. So we're looking to see, is there space to create a filter lane, a right filter lane there? And there is some green space that possibly could be sacrificed there to create that, and maybe narrow the cycle lanes in order to create the space there. It was pointed out that one of the green spaces had actually been built on already at one corner of the junction.
parking on Histon Road, as other people have said. The Residents Association strongly opposes any loss of parking, although some of the members thought that with that amount of space, parking is really inappropriate because of safety concerns. The concern was also what those cars, where those cars would go, which would be in the residential areas. There's also concern about cars coming out of the tire place opposite all the Esso stations. They need backing into the road. Aldi and Esso stations need an off-street access, so that there's less turning and entering on Histon Road. They were very concerned that Huntington Road and Histon Road cannot turn into Victoria Road, and that you've got an alternative possibility for that intersection. This one, mostly just to show that it seems as though there are opportunities between the Esso station and the shops and Warwick, Gilbert, for some trees to be put into in unallocated land there, and there's a verge along here. If you miss the driveways, there seem to be small places where trees might be inserted between the pavement and private property that seem to be already in the jurisdiction of the Highway Authority. So we try to point those out. There was also concern about the earlier part of Histon Road. It was felt that there could be an advisory cycle lane, and the Cherry Hinton Road High Street, which has a traffic calm zone where 20 miles an hour maximum, the cars and the bikes have to watch out for each other, and that would give two-way cycle protection, and rather than just have one formal cycle lane and then the rest is up to chance. Do you want to say more about that advisory? Or just show your...
I just wanted to say the Cherry Hinton High Street could be...
Could you stand up, please?
Sorry,
Bring your...
but we have to...
That's an alternative.
But this is... just about Cherry Hinton High Street, the county has already redone it, so we may as well see what happens there. It's also a very limited carriageway width, just like Histon Road. Okay, so regarding the junction, for Gilbert Road, there's plenty of space, and I propose that the pavement be expanded, and then you can put, behind that expanded pavement, you put separate cycle lanes that keep people cycling completely separate from cars, completely separate from pedestrians. They have their own cycle signals at head level so that you can see when you have a green light. And the idea is that this would be a much safer approach to the junction than you don't use this advanced stop line stuff, which puts cycles in front of cars. Instead, you keep people separate from cars throughout the junction and give them their own traffic signals so that they know when it's safe to go. Yeah, and this is very common in the Netherlands, and so I think that this should be explored here and in other junctions that need to be signalized in the city. Oh, and one more thing. The bus lane here, completely unnecessary, and then we can put the cycle lane underneath the tree canopy and not touch any of the existing trees. They can stay right where they are. And all this can be done without affecting any of the green areas. So you'll have to excuse my crude art drawings, but all this can be done without affecting any of the existing green.
Do you want to show the alternative for the... Have you read the book? This is an alternative sketch for roundabout where Victoria Road comes into this road. It has not been thoroughly detailed as to how cyclists and pedestrians work, but there's basically crossings and signals. Signal idea, roundabout. Okay, so I think I've done. There's a lot of looking for tree
Okay, I'm conscious of the time, and I'm sure the caretaker will be waiting to back us. We're measuring our time. Once again, many thanks for coming along today. I think we'll try to drum up a bit more interest for future workshops, but we're very grateful for your time. All the thoughts and comments you put forward today will be captured. Eventually they will be assessed, and a report will be put forward to the local liaison forum, and they will discuss the points that you've made, and they will then determine their comments that will be fed back to the executive board. As I say, this is the start of the design workshop process. There will be an LLF meeting at the end of the 4 design workshops. There will be then 2 subsequent workshops looking at mitigation and key challenges, and then there will be a further local liaison forum meeting where we will then ask the forum to sum up its comments that it wants to take forward to the board. As part of developing the next stage, the board will reflect on that, and the board have asked for the LLF chair to come along and present to the board members before they make any decisions on how they want to take forward the design process to facilitate a further public consultation. And it's important to emphasise that this is only part of the process. There will be a full public consultation where you will have a further opportunity to influence the design that's emerged from this, along with everybody else that has an interest.
Just about buses, I wondered if you could make it more widely understood how it is that bus companies can have their arms twisted or whatever to actually provide the buses if we're going to take down the trees and make
I'm conscious of time. It's worth saying that the City Deal Board are having ongoing discussions with bus operators, because clearly, the point has been made, it's all very well building the infrastructure. If you don't have the buses there to use it, it's all a bit of a waste of time. So there's an ongoing dialogue, and certainly City Deal will need to put a bit more meat on the bone about what the bus network may look like once we have developed this infrastructure, to make sure that when we create these new facilities, there are buses there, not only running on more routes, but running more reliable services to capture the patronage that hopefully will be out there as new houses are developed. So this is the start of the process. Hopefully you'll continue to support the design workshops. Hopefully you'll be able to attend the LLF meetings where there will be a discussion. Whilst the LLF meetings are not, there's no automatic right for the public to speak, I'm sure that the chair will want to give every opportunity for questions to be asked as part of those ongoing discussions. So,
the point that Margaret said about the buses. What people have to bear in mind, then, it's like on Friday there was a meeting of this City Deal, and one of the most important things is that because of government legislation, the local councils cannot mandate buses. They cannot run them, they cannot set them up. It's purely private, and they do what they want. And that is the biggest problem that was identified, was that all of this is well and good, but if there's no way of, the government controlling the buses in some ways, then this is all pie in the sky.
well, that's not strictly true. There is a mechanism that local authorities can use, but it's quite draconian, and of course, we have a deregulated market, and if you scare off the market, and there isn't an operator here, you'll be taking over nothing at all. But I think the point has been well made that City Deal needs to make sure that there's a much better bus service that's being offered as part of this. There's no point investing in all this money if the bus operator's not responding and using the infrastructure that they may not be.
You also mentioned subsidising fares, possibly, by collecting revenue.
Well, I'm conscious we could broaden this whole debate. We've overrun, and we're supposed to be out
Very short. We noted that Mr. Rowe workshop and the camera was here, and we have thought he would be here for this session. Is he planning to come to any of this workshops?
He has been well, stageholders have been invited, as they have been to all the workshops. At the end of the day, we can invite stakeholders. We're not in a position to mandate them to come. The offer will be there for him to attend. Thank you very much. safe journey home.
Thank you. I can see you probably have a little bit more money but you've your colleague Glenn or could you guess his email address? Yeah, that'd be great. Or, I assume that would be a standard form in the
There is, but it depends if there's something I can tell you what it's like.
Okay, well, if you'd be happy to. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Yeah, you can send that out, yeah? Yeah, sure. Oh, Oh, WS. So you'll just drop me an email with it? Yeah. Thank you very much. I had a half conversation with him earlier, but I appreciate Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. See you in 2 weeks. Yeah. Okay. Bye.